The Madlanga Commission continues with a cross-examination of suspended component head for organised crime, Major General Richard Shibiri. Let's cross over to SABC News' Sakina Kamwendo and Canny Maphanga to bring us the latest from the Commission. Good morning to you, Sakina.
Well, good morning, Leanne, and welcome back to the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. It's day 72 of the Madlanga Commission, and of course, we will see the return of the suspended head of component in organised crime, and that is Major General Richard Shibiri. Canny Maphanga, interestingly, at the start of his testimony, he spoke about the modus operandi of infiltration, and one of the questions that was asked by one of the commissioners was whether this worked both ways in terms of the criminal element infiltrating the police and of course the police infiltrating the criminal syndicates similarly. But that was quite interesting, along with the allegations that he also sought to address.
Indeed. Good morning to you, Sakina, and to the viewers. I think it is important that we are seeing a Phase 2 implicated person actually come before the Commission and admit that the problem does exist to some extent. Because what we've seen from most of the Phase 2 implicated persons is that they've come here and almost tried to create a picture that it's a figment of Lieutenant General Madlanga Commission's imagination, and that simply does not exist. But you're having a witness come in and state that there is an infiltration to some extent, and how the infiltration manifests within the criminal justice system and its various entities. However, his version still demands answers, because you in one breath agree that there is infiltration and that it manifests in certain ways, but there is a particular way in which you present the evidence which seeks to divorce yourself from that same infiltration and high-ranking SABC officials, because he limits it to ordinary police on the ground when he talks about the infiltration, and he limits it to petty instances or just to different individuals. He makes it a point to say that it's not institutional, because if you say it's not institutional, then it's not a culture within SABC. That's what you're trying to advance. But however, what we are seeing is that there is a risk that this is just something that's taking place because it has, quote-unquote, allegedly become the norm. But the evidence against him is going to raise critical questions against this particular defense, which he seeks to suggest that the infiltration is something that happens in isolated incidents, and it's more on the ground. You know how he speaks of operational issues, lower courts, things that affect those ordinary investigators.
An example of a case that he was involved in.
Absolutely. So it seeks to divorce those high-ranking SABC officials from the conduct or the alleged infiltration which he admits to. But I don't know if he'll be able to sustain that, because Vusimuzi Matlala and Katiso Katie Milefe were not allegedly targeting your ordinary officials on the ground. They very much enjoyed alleged close associations with high-ranking SABC officials, and that's important because it could only be from the top where you enjoy that shield, not from the bottom. And I think that evidence is going to be quite critical for him to maneuver when the evidence gets tested, because you could not ever advance that Vusimuzi Matlala had loaned you money and that you were interacting with him during that period just off the purposes of a social interaction and not in connection with the alleged syndicate that he was involved in.
He alleges that Vusimuzi Matlala did not have his personal banking details, which is contradictory to evidence that had been led earlier about money that was paid to him and him being angry at the money being paid into his bank account. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how all of that is navigated. So we'll leave it there for now. Of course, much more to come here from the Madlanga Commission and from us in terms of just unpacking and breaking down what we've heard so far from Major General Shibiri. And as I stated earlier, he vehemently denies all the claims that were made against him, all the allegations he has basically rebuffed. But it's going to be interesting to see whether he can sustain that under cross-examination. But for now, back to you, Leanne.
All right, thanks so much, ladies. We'll check in with you again and get some analysis just after 7:30 here on the programme.